So, the job I just started at, it has a very strict no love, no romance type. You can't do it with anyone in the office. Well, I didn't know. I'm just starting here, and honestly, I'm not even going to call him my boyfriend. We just had some coffee together, and I loved being around him. Well, then I found out he got fired for it, and then I found out, well, the only reason my boss fired him is because my boss thinks I'm hot. So you know what? I'm going to get this dog and put him in the kennel. Before I get into anything, I want to issue a disclaimer. I know my actions that led to this were stupid, I get it. I'm young, I'm naive, and I should have thought things through before making any moves or reciprocating any moves towards me. I know my friends have beaten it to my head at this point, and I swear to you, I know. Now that that's said, let me tell you what happened, and hopefully the internet will do its thing and serve up someone with exactly the right experience of life and advice and just help me out in general. I recently, well, not too recently, but recently enough that I'm still called the new kid, started working a new job. I've been working in the public relation industry since I graduated, but this is my first in-house position. All of my previous experience comes from a boutique, agencies that provide public relations and marketing services for external clients, whereas this time, I'm on an internal public relation team. For those of you unfamiliar with the industry, in my experience, boutique agencies have a huge female presence. Every agency I've worked with has a majority female team, and only one of the agencies wasn't founded by a woman. So, I'm very used to working with very few or absolutely no male coworkers, and then I got this job. It's an engineering firm, which is sort of out of left field for me, but their CSR division was hiring, and it's something that I've always been interested in. So, I applied. And after a few interviews, I got the job, and as you can probably imagine, it's been a huge cultural shock ever since, and guys, don't get me wrong. I love my new job. It's been extremely interesting learning about a new industry and implementing new strategies that I haven't really gotten the chance to explore since college. That being said, I'm the only woman in the department. In fact, I'm one of the 2 women on the whole floor, and it's not a big company, but it's definitely a boys' club. After all things were said and done, I think I adjusted well, and I would like to think that I'm good at what I do, and that I work well with my coworkers, despite the fact that I've never worked with this many men before. I believe I've adjusted well, and my job performance has not been impacted at all. Of course, if everything was all hunky-dory, you would be reading this post right now, would you? Nope. A couple of months ago, maybe a week or so after I joined, one of the engineers in a different department put through a request with my supervisor. I was obviously still learning the position at that point, so my supervisor had me sit in on the entire process and walked me through all the paperwork and procedures necessary. Well, Clark, my supervisor, then had me handle all the follow-ups for the request, which meant meeting with the engineer. Bo a couple of more times, and, well, on one of those occasions, Bo brought me a cup of coffee. The next time he asked if I would like to come with him to get some coffee, so I did. I know in hindsight that it was stupid and very unprofessional, and I didn't even bother looking up any company policies at the time because I figured it was just coffee, I was new. Here was this guy who seemed well-liked and good at his job, asking me out for coffee. I figured that even if nothing came out of it, at least I could have a friend, a real friend in the office. It quickly spiraled to more than just friends, and by the time a just coffee ran, I actually looked up company policies regarding workplace romances and found that there were some pretty strict policies in place. But Bo convinced me that we weren't doing anything wrong per se. We were in different departments with different chains of command, so technically speaking, we might be in the clear if we were in a relationship, which we weren't. We'd just gone out for a few coffees together, nothing scandalous. Still, we decided to keep things down low to avoid any unnecessary drama. So the coffee runs continued and eventually turned into lunch, which eventually turned into dinner, and sometimes even carpooling after work because I took the train everywhere. And sometimes it was just more convenient for him to drop me off at my place. Sometimes he'd come in for a while, and we never officially labeled anything between us. And bringing up the whole "what are we" talk just seemed really juvenile to me. I mean, we're both adults, and we both knew what we were doing, so it wasn't really necessary for either of us to talk about it any more than we already had. Cut to about 3 weeks ago. and the CSR department is developing a new campaign that heavily involves the CEO. For the sake of the post, I'll refer to him as Mr. Haynes. Obviously fake name, right? Anyway, seeing as I've been working directly under the head of the department, I've been quite involved in this campaign. We're still in the early phases of it, but that meant frequent meetings with the CEO's office and lots of time spent streamlining what this campaign is actually going to look like before we start on any actual work. Consequently, I've been spending a lot of time with the CEO. So, not alone, obviously. My supervisor, Clark, has been present for most of the meetings, in fact, and, there's a handful of other people who are involved, too. But at this stage, it's not really a full-on production yet, so the necessary manpower is limited. It's definitely been a great experience so far to work on a campaign of this scale and work so closely with upper management. Mr. Haynes, in particular, has been a delight to work with. Since our first meeting, he's been extremely welcoming towards me. I was a little worried initially about sitting in on something as important as the initial meetings between upper management and Clark, but his attitude towards me calmed me down soon enough. I'm not an idiot. I did suspect that his gracious attitude might have something to do with me being female, and not ugly, if I do say so myself. But Clark assured me that Mr. Haynes has always been kind to our department since he was initially the lead of CSR himself before his big promotion. Since this is a pretty big project, a lot of my current workload centers around the campaign. I've spent more time in the last couple of weeks on the upper levels of the building than that of my own desk. But it's been a rewarding experience, and I've even got my own temporary workstation set up there. Since I've been working up here, Bo still comes to drop off a cup of coffee for me, or to walk me down to the lunch occasionally. What did not occur to me initially is that other people would notice this too. By and large, no one's really cared about our coffee runs or shared lunches. A lot of people eat together here, so it's not really out of the ordinary. However, it's possible that the lack of attention had made us a bit careless. We're not officially in a relationship or anything like that, not yet anyways, but I can definitely see us heading in that direction. Well, that being said, we're definitely a bit friendlier towards each other than I am towards the rest of my colleagues. I would like to think I'm quite professional despite the contents of this post, but I would definitely let my guard down more with Bo than when anyone else in the office. It seems that it's been more noticeable than I realized because earlier today, Bo and I received a calendar invite to meet with Mr. Haynes and an HR representative first thing tomorrow morning. Well, I got off early today for a dental appointment, so that's likely the only reason the request is for tomorrow instead of today, and I've been freaking out ever since. I'm pretty sure that we haven't broken any rules, at least officially, but maybe our conduct has been not as professional as I thought. Still, I can't even imagine what we would have done to warrant not only a meeting with HR, but with the CEO himself. Is it normal for possible workplace misconduct cases to be handled by the head of the company? Anywho, I've spent the last couple of hours absolutely freaking out about this over the phone with some friends of mine, who have informed me that I'm a supreme idiot for even daring to start a workplace romance while I'm still the new kid on the block. Well, anyways, as you can imagine, though true, that wasn't very comforting for me to hear. So please, 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 tell me that there's a chance that this does not all blow up in my face. I like this job, and I also don't want something like this to haunt me for the rest of my career. What should I do? Updates. Number 1. Bo was fired. I'm writing this on the train home, trying very hard to process everything, which I don't even think I even have right to do, because honestly, somehow I wasn't fired, but I'll explain how the meeting with HR and Mr. Haynes went in a second. But I don't think I want to relive that right now. So I'm just going to respond to some comments first, and I don't think it's very relevant, but for those of you who have been asking for my age, I'm turning 29 at the end of the year. Maybe that makes things seem worse because in the grand scheme of things, I'm really not all that young. I'm pushing 30, so maybe I should have known better, but I clearly didn't, and now someone else is paying the price, and for those of you who could not be bothered to Google what CSR means, it's corporate social responsibility. I don't really feel like explaining it any further than that since it's really not relevant to the post, so please, if you want to know more, just look it up yourself. A lot of companies have CSR divisions, and I wasn't specifically trying to get into that industry. I haven't been in it before, but I thought that it would be interesting to apply to something so different from what I was used to. I'm not here to sabotage a good masculine workplace like some of you have been suggesting. Like everyone here, I'm just here to do my job so I can live my life in peace. Sue me for wanting a challenging, intellectually stimulating job. I didn't come here with the hopes of seducing a rich engineer. I don't know where Bo and I stand now, considering we didn't really have the chance to speak to each other after the meeting. He was dismissed before I was, and Mr. Haynes and the HR rep explained to me that the only reason I wasn't fired was that I was still new and more likely to be unaware of the company policies. Mr. Haynes said that he had personally witnessed my work ethic and was willing to keep me on because he believed that I would be an asset to the company, especially now that I had no, quote, distractions. Well, that last comment did rub me in the wrong way a little bit, but I don't think it was the right place or time to express it. So I kept that thought to myself and just promised that I'd be nothing but dedicated to get my job going forward. Well, this part is genuine. I meant it when I said that I love my job and I really want to put my best foot forward now that I've already stumbled so heavily at just the beginning. I'm immensely grateful that this hasn't left me out on the street, jobless and possibly with a terrible reputation in the industry. On the other hand, I can't help but feel immense guilt about the fact that it seems to have gotten me off scot-free. Well, Bo lost his job, one he's worked at for longer than I've been here, all because he brought me coffee while I was upstairs. I mean, come on. Right now, I just want to keep my head down and do my job, but is there any way I can fix this for Bo? Should I reach out to him, or would you think that would just make everything worse? Update number 2. Work has been terrible lately, and if you've been following along with my post up to this point, you may be inclined to say that this is exactly what I deserve. A part of me believes that too, but I don't know how much longer I can keep up with this without completely withering away. Okay, yeah, I know, first world problems, but I started something that I should have never started, and now I reap the rewards of my stupidity. I get it. You reap what you sow, and I was an idiot. However, I guess some part of me hoped that after being able to keep my job, things would just go back to normal and I would be able to put the whole mess behind me while proving my worth here as a professional. One thing about offices, though, is that gossip spreads like wildfire. I mean, it's high school 2.0. Everyone knows that Bo was fired, and everyone knows why he was fired, and the raise of natural questioning of what on earth I'm still doing here. Well, while my supervisor Clark has been keeping a handle on the environment within our department, he can't shield me from everything, especially not from all of the comments and looks I keep getting from the rest of the company, particularly Bo's old team. As I mentioned before, Bo was well liked. That seems to have translated to me being almost universally disliked for being the reason he got fired. To make matters worse, my work with Mr. Haynes has ramped up as work on the campaign straight up increases. With Clark heading the department and having more to focus on, and I've taken point on this campaign, which has meant working closely with Mr. Haynes more often than not. I'm not oblivious. I know how it looks that Bo, someone who's been working here longer than I have, was fired while I wasn't. All the while, I'm conveniently working closely with the head of the company now. I know people are likely thinking, and honestly, I'm starting to think it too. Maybe there was some favoritism to play because Mr. Haynes has been very, very friendly with me ever since meeting with Bo. I don't know. Maybe I'm being delusional and reading into this too much. But I've had enough experience as a woman for the last 29 years of my life to be reasonably sure that I'm not going crazy here. I mean, I haven't spoken to anyone about it despite my suspicions, and I can't be 100% certain of his intentions, and the fact that he hasn't actually done something is not a point in my favor. If I say anything now, I seem like even more of a desperate corporate climber than everyone already thinks I am. It's only been about 3 weeks since Bo was fired, but with everyone icing me out. Mr. Hayne doing the exact opposite, it feels like it's been forever. And All I know is that every day I go to work, my suspicions rise a little bit further, and that's frustrating me even more because I don't seriously want to believe that my boss fired someone for getting, quote, too close to me, so that he could do the same. I mean, what terrible, corny, K-drama level plot is my life. Update number 3. Hey guys, well, this one's wild. If this situation has taught me anything, it's that a woman should always trust her intuition. If I listened to myself from the beginning, I would have never had started anything with Beau. I would have known that trying to skirt around strict corporate rules wasn't worth it, and that, regardless of how things played out, I would get the short end of the stick. If I had listened to my intuition directly after, I would have known that a new hire should not be heading a campaign this important. I'm good at my job. And I will not diminish that, but considering the fact that I'm still on probation thanks to how recently I was hired, I should not be the main point of contact with the CEO's office for this campaign. Clark has had absolute faith in my abilities ever since we started working on the campaign, but I wouldn't be surprised if even he were a bit suspicious about why Mr. Haynes himself has requested that I take a point on this. Well, about why I've got a temporary workstation on the floor reserved for the higher-ups. If you're still confused at this point, I'll spell it out for you. Mr. Haynes has definitely been flirting with me, and any plausible deniability I could muster up in my mind to explain away his overly familiar behavior, especially since Beau was fired, was washed away the second he brought me coffee earlier that day. Let me reiterate. The CEO, the head of the company, and the most important man in the building got me a coffee. I was meant to meet with him to iron out some details about the campaign I keep mentioning, but he pushed back the meeting by a couple of hours, so we ended up meeting during my usual break time instead. Then I get to his office, and he said that he was really sorry about eating into my break time, so why don't we have some coffee and pastries before we start? I tried to say, that we should just go ahead with the meeting and I'd have my break later, but he insisted, persisting the coffee and pastries he'd already gotten from the very same coffee where Beau would get me coffee from. Oh boy. At that point, it was either I sit pretty and eat a damn croissant, or, well, get rid of my boss while I was less than a month out from what could have been a career-ending mishap. So I sat there, drank on my coffee, and ate a croissant while he made small talk about my life. He told me he was very grateful for my addition to the office department, and that I made things more colorful with my presence in the office. He said that he would love to work more closely with me going forward, and he even told me to call him Warner instead of Mr. Haynes. I kept things polite and was thankfully able to steer things back a bit towards the actual meeting after gulping down my coffee, and I hightailed it out of there directly after, but now I'm left with a dilemma. I know for a fact that this man had Beau fired so that he could pull this off with me. I've dealt with the big male egos before, maybe not in a professional setting, but I know exactly what I'm facing. I know that some of you in the comment section might still think that I'm reading too far into this and taking things too personally, but I swear to you, a woman always knows. This man had an employee fired so he could flirt with me without any competition, and as though I'm a possession to be passed around by the men of the company, as though having Beau out of the way meant that I would throw myself at him at the first opportunity. Come on. The best part about it is, guys, I also know for a fact that Haynes is a married man. As unprofessional as I may have been to start off the path, nothing compares to what he's trying to do. And I'm nothing if not a girl's girl. Update number 4. There have been some pretty big developments since my last update, guys. Are you ready for this? Not too much time has passed, and it's only been 2 weeks, but I think I can safely declare this whole situation as well as truly settled. In the words of the great Taylor Swift, karma's a relaxing thought, and I've just helped to dish some on a big scale. To continue where I left off, Mr. Warner Haynes is a married man. I also mentioned in one of my previous updates that he did not start as CEO. In fact, he was previously the head of my department. So what takes the head of CSR straight to CEO in a matter of a years? Well, the simple answer is nepotism. The more specific answer is that he's married to the boss. I mentioned before that I've only ever worked at one company that wasn't founded by a woman, And apparently that still holds true because the firm that I currently work at is actually founded by Haynes' wife, Alexis. Her family apparently has a whole bunch of money, and she's become a bit of a serial entrepreneur. Because after this firm was up and running, she left to focus on other projects, leaving her husband in charge. Her husband thought it would be a good idea to make a move on me after flirting, and then firing the man I was seeing to make sure I was single. Gosh, this office high school 2.0 status, because if it weren't for that constantly churning rumor mill, I never would have found out that Alexis was the real boss. I think it's clear from my last update that I was planning on doing something about Haynes. For real. And, this new information, I reformulated my plan. He ruined Beau's career, guys. I wasn't about to let him get away scot-free, so I did the most sensible thing I could think of. I reciprocated his advances, and I didn't do anything physical, don't you worry about that. I was a little friendly after our next meeting, and when he asked for my private number, I gladly gave it to him. It was almost too easy to get him to incriminate himself. Evidently he was very proud of his little play to get rid of any romantic competition and very willingly to gloat about it. I, of course, stoked his ego a bit when then worriedly brought up the fact that I'd heard he was married. He let me know in no uncertain terms that it would not be a problem, and it wouldn't be not for me, not for him. Well, maybe so for him. It's going to be a huge problem. Because with these text messages in hand, I went straight to HR. Lucky me, the person I met was other women's who I'd mentioned before. Even luckier, she's apparently the head of HR and a good friend of Alexis Haynes. I know it was risky going to HR with this, considering it was possibly that they would side with him, but considering the fact that I already had the text messages, I was confident that I'd be able to get the information to Alexis at some point. The HR lady just helped with the process, and I don't know too much about what happened yet, but I do know that Haynes has been not here for the last week, and a company-wide memo has been issued stating that he's going to be, restructuring an upper management. I've been assured by HR that my job is not at risk, though my friends have advised me to consult a lawyer just in case things get a bit hairy. I don't know if this will have any ramifications on my career. I don't know if this could lead to me being blacklisted and never hired again anywhere. What I do know is that a slimy, arrogant man thought that he could dictate my life choices by exerting his power inappropriately and blow it up in his face. I hope his wife throws him into the dogs. With that being said, thanks for reading this far. I really appreciate the advice that some of you gave me, and yes, I'll be looking for a new job. Final update. Hey guys, for anyone who still cares about the updates on this thread, I'm back. Nothing revolutionary has happened since my last update, but we're coming up on the anniversary of my initial post, so I figured I'd give a little bit of an update. First of all, I've since gotten a new job. It's still in-house, but at a very different company on the other side of the city, and it's a great position. To top it all off, there are actually more women here than men. I'm definitely having a better time here than I was at my last job, and yes, I promise I'm steering clear of any workplace romances. Now let's move on to the juicy bit, shall we? I kept in touch with my old supervisor Clark after I left, and he's actually become a really good friend. And friends actually like to gossip. Those of you who weren't accusing me of being a career destroyer harlot will be happy to know that Mr. Warner Haynes is no longer the CEO. In fact, the rumors are true. Once his divorce is finalized, he won't be much of anything. Apparently, his wife owned everything, not just the company, but their house, his car, and everything. There's no children involved, thank goodness, but everything this man has belongs to his wife, who apparently had a prenup with an adultery clause. Well, yeah, that's true. In the interest of not getting myself involved in any more drama, I've steered clear of the whole situation beyond what I absolutely had to do. I provided transcripts of all the text message exchanges with Haynes and written testimony of his conduct with me, and have otherwise kept myself completely separate from it all. It's safe to say that when this is over, Haynes will be left with nothing, and I think that serves him right. Let me know, have you ever had a romance in the workplace? How did it turn out? Let me know in the comments.